This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So today I'm joined by former Dublin selector Paul Clarke and former Ballyboden St Enda's manager Kenny Naughton to look back on Galway's narrow defeat to Dublin at the weekend. 214 to 118. Dublin ran out 1 point winners. So all attention for Galway now switches to Derry on the June bank holiday weekend up in Celtic Park, and that game now really becomes a must win after the defeat last Saturday in Pearse Stadium. First off, Paul, coming to you first, whatever about the All Ireland series and everything, I just thought it was a great occasion in Pearse Stadium and everything on Saturday.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Galway brought a great support, and there's always a great atmosphere there. Sometimes the wind and the rain can stifle people's enthusiasm to be at games, but like the conditions were perfect. The pitch looked great. Dublin travelled in great numbers. Um, you know, you would have said, well, look, Galway are coming in on the back of a good performance. The game previous, Dublin are coming in on a low performance, not giving them a chance travelling down there. And look, it created for a great game. What we didn't realise was then that teams were going to go toe to toe. It was helter skelter from the throw in, and there was plenty of opportunities for scores, for goals, some great points being taken, some great hits, tackles, old school fielding. It was I had a bit of everything, and it certainly set us up for what was a great 70 minutes of football, and as good as it was, that's the way probably should have finished, as close as it was.
Yeah, Kenny, it was a great game, wasn't it, on Saturday?
Yeah, it was, and I think it's been noticeable like in the games that I've been to. Like I was actually at the Mayo Galway game and Dublin Meath, and I just think the standard of football and the type of games that have been played are much better than what they have been in the last couple of years. I think we've had more good games already in the championship, nearly than last year combined. And it seems to be like, as much of a legacy Jim Gavin will have from the five in a row with the Dublin. I think the changes in the rules, he'll be remembered for this as well, because it's transformed the game, in my view. And there's much more possession contests, which people want to see, and moving the ball quicker, and just the tempo of the games is just way better. Even like the solo and goal has been a great rule. And it seems to have taken the negativity and the defensive aspect out of the game a bit, and I think it's football is really flourishing for that. And yeah, I thought it was a super game on Saturday. Both teams really went at it, and you know I think Galway can still take a lot from it as well. Dublin were very poor against Meath, but they still have some of the best footballers in the country, and they know how to win. So even looking at before I came on this, I think 14 or 13 or 14 of the Galway team played in the league against Dublin, and Dublin won that comfortably enough. So they had one bad game against Meath in the championship, but it's still a good Dublin team, and they're going to take a lot of beating going forward.
Who is it, Kenny, you shout for when it comes to this game? Obviously, you've been in Dublin for the last 20 years and it's Galway as well.
I know I'd still be shouting for Galway, but I would I'd have a special interest, obviously, in hoping the Ballyboden lads would do well. Colin Basquel obviously has been a huge player for Ballyboden for a long time, and in the last couple of years he's really kicked on with Dublin and won the All-Star 2 years ago. So you got a lot of satisfaction out of seeing him doing well. And then Alex Gavin is a guy who he came through he played straight out of minor and played centre back the first year I was managing the team at Ballyboden. There's very few people do that, so he's a talented guy, and, it's great to see him progressing and getting his chance and doing well. I think he made a big difference when he came on against Meath. He tightened the thing up a lot, and I thought he was good enough without being spectacular the last day as well. So he's comfortable at that level. And then there's a few more guys knocking around the panel who are thereabouts. So you'd always like to see the Ballyboden lads doing well, but of course Keane Darcy is a Ballyboden man now as well. So it's been great to see his progress over the last couple of years as well. He when he joined us, he wasn't really playing intercounty football, or wasn't at that level, and he just got his love back for the game with us. And you're obviously delighted to see him back in with Galway and doing so well with them as well. So mixed emotions, but it was a super game, I felt.
Paul, Kenny was talking there about the new rules. You've obviously been involved with Jim Gavin for quite a long time with Dublin when you were in there. Were you surprised with the way Jim Gavin has improved the game so much and therefore see?
I think it was a huge challenge to actually to try and reinvent it, because the game had, how to say, evolved into a slightly negative type of thing where teams are getting back behind the ball so quickly, or not committing so many players forward, and you're playing this famous +1 in front of your full back line. And it was creeping in everywhere. The Championship League, it was creeping in at club level, underage level. I've seen it myself around Dublin. And to take away, how to say, the natural ability of a full back line being able to protect itself, mark players, not having that extra bodies in front of it. You know, took that defensive thing that we've seen recently, say with mid cornerbacks and mid fullbacks, and even Theo Clancy, the way Theo drives out of the ball now, we're starting to see a bit more of that aggression from fullbacks, because they'll commit now to the tackle because they mightn't have so much protection in front of them, because the way they have the tree up. Um, Jim had a great group of people around him, vastly experienced from all around the country, who played football at the highest level, coached at the highest level, been involved at county teams, successful county teams. And, I'm sure to be a fly on the wall at some of those meetings would have been a great thing. I don't think it was just Jim saying, well, this is how it is. Jim would obviously, I'd say, have opinions, but he would be a great delegator, and may delegate certain jobs to certain guys within that committee, to work on how are we going to improve attacking, how are we going to improve defending, how are we going to stop cynical play, how are we going to improve the kickouts, that maybe we're going to go for long kickouts. How do we force the keeper to do that? Maybe to bring back in high fielding again, or that competitive element around the middle of the park, which we now see. So I'd say Jim would delegate. You would bring your information back to him and be very quick then to maybe say, right, that works, or no, I think we need a little readjustment, or it could be a group discussion. So I'd say that's how we led it, and that's how it worked out.
It's really interesting stuff there when you're even talking about Jim and the delegation, but I definitely think already the game is in a good place, even with the games we've seen over the weekend. If we're to look in depthly at this game, Kenny, like it felt at halftime when I was on the terrace during the match that Dublin definitely left a few opportunities after them in that first half. They had a few chances. They probably might be a bit disappointed with the shooting. Then
Yeah,
going,
I think yeah, like I mean, I wasn't at it, but I mean, I don't know how strong the wind was, but like I mean, I think in the first 3 or 4 minutes, Dublin had four shots, scored two, so like they came out like a train, and it was noticeable. Galway, obviously Galway got across the line against Mayo, but I didn't think they were that good in that game. Like, I mean, they had a very strong breeze up in Castlebar, and they only had one shot in the first 15 minutes, with the aid of the strong breeze. So, like, I think Galway were a bit slow starting again, getting into the game. And then obviously, like, the big weakness that I would have seen in Dublin in the mid game was just, the kick out with Cluxon, and, they were getting cleaned out on that. Whereas, like, they made a few changes there, they got their matchups right. And I think, Cluxton targeted Kilkenny on a good few kickouts. O'Coffey Byrne won a good few kickouts, and I think Con won a few as well. So they kind of, I'd say Dublin or Galway would have expected to dominate possession, given the Tierney, Darcy, Conroy, all these big men around the middle. But Dublin, I don't know, they probably caught them on the hop a little bit. The fact that Dublin had so much possession from kickouts, both Galway and their own, that gave them a great platform then to kind of dominate the game. And Galway were, I think they were living off scraps a little bit. In that first half. So I think Dublin were, they were well worthy of their 4 point lead at half time. And I think Galway, they responded well then after that. I thought they played well in the second half.
Yeah, Paul, even if you're looking at Dublin race into that 2 point lead, Galway get 3 points in a row. They get two pointers from Shane Walsh and Robert Finnerty. It puts them 5-2. It just shows with these 2 pointers how it can nearly flatter a team. But Dublin did really take control, even when you consider after that leading 19 to 8 at the break.
Yeah, I was looking. I was obviously looking back in the game, and whether it was a set plan or a play or whatever. But when you notice that Galway got some key scores, Dublin actually won the next kick out. Normally, what happens in these type of games is that you get a run of scores. I do remember the second half when they got a goal. Then Stephen took a short kick out, was intercepted. I think Galway got a point straight after. Maybe Thompson got a goal in the pointer. But certainly when they kicked the 2 pointers, Dublin won the next kickouts from that, which was huge. Sort of clean catches or very aggressive breaking of the ball. What impressed me was the execution of the catch to win the kickouts. Whether guys are coming from behind, putting the body into the catch with two hands clean above the head. We've seen O'Coffey Bourne doing it. We've seen Con coming, Howie, Kieran obviously as well. But then you look how Padre Coffey Bourne, like I did some Dubs TV championship work this year, and I said to myself, like, this is where Padre Coffey Bourne had to step up to the mark. He's a big player. He's a strong player. He's just won a Club All Ireland. He was really a big part of their performances on kickouts, throw-ups. He made some great tackles. For a big man, he tackles really well. And, this was before Brian Fenton stepped away. This was his opportunity, or this is his opportunity to step forward. And I thought he played really well as a midfielder. Like, okay, he was catching clean ball behind guys. He also was committing to a catch, but then noticing players around maybe for flicks, or he was getting quick catches and laying off for quick play the ball. And then next time he could step out in front of the pack, which is a great talent to have, that you're not jumping from behind. If you kick a football from a goalkeeper, it's normally in the air for 4 seconds. You can travel so much distance in a 4 second straight sprint. But if you can get in front of a pack and win the ball in front of a pack that's jostling for the ball, and he did that really well on a number of occasions. So he really started to play like the player that he has the potential to be. And now he has to push on the next day. Maybe not play as well, but if he can match his numbers from the last day, it's certainly it's his development going in the right trajectory.
I think, Kenny, from a Galway perspective, on the video analysis session this week, they'll be really disappointed in the manner of that Cormac Costello goal. Conor Gleeson obviously plays his short, and Liam Siggs just gets caught, unfortunately. And once he gets caught, the space just opens up.
Yeah, like yeah, totally. Like he took the goal fairly well. I think he was lucky at it. It, it kind of dipped through his legs. Like it was a good finish, but like, you've seen that really at that level of football. Like, if you turn the ball over around that area with the forwards Dublin have, you're in big trouble. I mean, probably the key moment in the All-Ireland final a couple of years ago was when Basquel intercepted Kerry and they ran through and got that goal as well. So I mean, you just can't turn the ball over in those situations. Like and I'd say 7 or 8 times out of 10, if the same thing happens, that's going to wind up in the back of the net. So it was a bad it was a bad score for Galway to give away. There's not really there's no system fault there. It's just an individual error, and you just have to be better in that situation.
What did the two of you make of Conor Leeson being able to ultimately just kick the ball out to himself during the game? Like it just looked like being there, it just looked ludicrous to me.
Yeah, like we had a performance analyst with us last year, Shane Mangan, and he had identified it like that the rules did allow for it, so we were kind of waiting for somebody to actually do it, and I think it worked pretty well. It showed a bit of innovation from Galway. I think another time Shane Walsh kicked a free backwards, and he got it back into his hand. I'm assuming if he had kicked that over, it would have been a two-pointer. That was in the first half, when you lose a game by a point, those little moments like make a big difference. But I don't know if it was intentional or not to leave that rule in there, but it's something I think we might see a bit more of. Because I think initially, like, the rules do allow for players to be inside the D as well, but they just don't do that, but I think maybe it's something to do with that. I'm not sure why that rule is there, but if it is a rule, I think Galway were right to exploit it, and I think they won both of the kickouts, but uh, I think Collie Basquel actually dispossessed Silk in the corner as well, and they got a score out of that. But it's good to see innovation, and it's good to see the rules allowing people to try stuff. I found it entertaining anyway, looking at it.
What do you make of seeing it, Paul?
I'm not mad about it at all. I'm not mad about it at all. it's a bit like you see a goalkeeper playing around the ball like that. Like he's fair game. He's outside the square. He's played the ball. If you want to go and press him, you think about the big gloves he's wearing. He's not like our Armagh keeper. He has like small gloves on him, and he might be able to handle the ball a bit better. It happens to be a great outfield player anyway. Um, but tapping it along, he's hitting it off a tee most of the time. It can scuff along the ground maybe. So I'm not too sure about it. Because unless he has a signal to the rest of his team, look, I'm going to do this, and they have to prepare it, or are they as shocked about it as Dublin was and everybody else on the sideline, that this was actually coming. You got to be sure of what you're doing, I'm comfortable.
The big talking point from this game is obviously how Dublin just matched Galway physically. I've kind of made this point on the podcast before, but are Galway playing starting too many of their monsters all at the one time together? Do you think maybe, I don't know, does it need to be considered? But it just seems like you need a playmaker now at 11 with the way the new rules are.
Yeah, like I mean, I think watching them last year, particularly against say Donegal, like where they just dominated possession and they controlled the game. I think that worked really well. But in the final, then, well, I think obviously like Finnerty was, losing Finnerty to injury early in the final was a massive factor in them not winning that. Like, and I mean, if you took him out of it on Saturday, we were really struggling for scores. Like the big thing for me looking back on it with Dublin is like, McGuinness got a couple of points. Con obviously scored. Kilkenny scored. They had a much better spread of scorers, whereas Galway like were very reliant on Finnerty. And I thought as well that, the half back line, like they're brilliant footballers, but like, they don't kick the ball that much.
Mm.
And I felt like that,
And
the
Sheen
two,
John Daly when he came in,
yeah,
what a
exactly.
very
Yeah.
good.
I think he could probably add something to it, like, because the two goals obviously came from long balls, and then, Shane Walsh's chance, that came from McDade switching the play, good kick pass, and we got another kick pass in, and the goal chance came out of that as well. So I think like there probably is an opportunity for Galway to, move that ball a bit quicker. I think they looked a lot more dangerous when they got the ball up the field a bit quicker. So it's probably something that they can work on. But like they are big men. Like Darcy is a big man, so is Tierney, but they're good footballers too. And I think you know
There's something maybe to mix it moving Conroy further forward.
yeah. Well, Conroy, I don't know. Like Conroy was he was brilliant against Mayo, and like he did a lot of the scoring. So I think Dublin, like, they had a good plan for him. It seemed like Odell or some of the forwards were dropping back in and specifically man marking him, which meant like he never really, I don't know how many possessions he had in the game. Like I'd say it was less than 10, and he never really got into it at all or got a chance to shoot. So like Dublin had their homework done on him, and that nullified a big scoring threat for us. And I think it was a big factor in Dublin winning the game. But yeah, I think the players that are there that they're playing are there on merit, like, and the guys are looking at them every day. So I wouldn't be second guessing the selection too much, but um, they're still pretty close to winning that game.
Yeah, yeah, it was really impressive the way Dublin kind of studied them around the middle. Like, how do you see that, Paul? Do you think it's something that maybe Galway hold one of them in reserve, but then up to this, they've just been so impressive around the middle third. Teams haven't really been able to match them before Dublin.
Yeah, look, I've a number of factors going through my head. Was like Galway had a fair run in the championship last year. It's hard to go to the All Ireland final and not have a couple of months of downtime after. And then seemed to go hard enough at the league. They were there or thereabouts, getting to league finals and pushing it again, and they're only out of a reasonably tough Connacht championship, Connacht final, all big games. And you said it yourself; these are big players that have to work hard to get through games. That was a warm day the other day. There was a lot of intensity off the ball. There was a lot of competitiveness in the air, and Dublin certainly put a press. The flip side of that is, like Dublin made 6 changes before the ball is thrown in. So those changes were they in specifically to do jobs on, key men. Conroy not getting his 2 point opportunities. Spoil him in the air and he's not getting his 2 points. Then he's wondering, how am I going to get into this game? What am I going to do to get myself in the game, Darcy the same, Martin, all big fellas that need the ball, have to win the ball to get themselves in the matches, and they were having a difficulty doing that, and in the heat of a game, and it's not going right for you, you do look for somebody else to try and drag you by the short collar and lift you up and do that for you. Dublin didn't have to worry about that because each fella was standing up man for man and doing what they got to do. And a lot of times you could see in the background if a tackle was made or a hit was made and the ball was won, there was a bit of a lift in the shoulders from them. Galway couldn't get that. You just couldn't get a foothold. Like if the goals were really clinically finished, like one of them is misjudged in the air, a tap in, goal
Yeah,
is great.
you're even expecting after the Thompson goal straight after half time that it might give Galway more
Yeah,
oxygen.
yeah. But Dublin had already, the chest was pumped up on it from the first half. Even to get that point from Kilkenny just before half time, the hooter was gone. Like they went off the pitch with lots of energy, So I'd say the talking in the Dublin dressing room was probably very little, but expect Galway to come at us. So there was a focus on that. Whereas Galway had to try and rally up their team. Try, lads, come on, you need to get into it. Plus, we have to deal with Con O'Callaghan, Kieran Kilkenny. The guy couldn't believe how much space Galway gave Kieran Kilkenny. He was like a quarterback, and then Brian Howard would play it a bit, and Bugler would come out. But these all had loads of time and space in the ball outside the 50 to pick passes, to drift around, to cut into space, and no one actually picked up and closed them. I guarantee against Armagh, Kieran Kilkenny won't get the space that he got the other day, They'll have somebody set to take him on and mark him, And then that's a challenge for Kieran. Can he deliver again when someone is, in his coattails?
And I think it's a good point that Paul makes, but the beauty of it for Dublin is that they have so many good forwards that you have to put your best man on Con. You have to mark Basquel, you have to mark Costello, so you have to assign really good defenders to all these players, and everyone has to pick up somebody good, and I know, say with Kilkenny, the big thing about him is that he's able to get on so much possession, that he can really control a game if you don't specifically man mark him. And maybe, as Paul said, he hadn't been that good in the last while, that he might have just taken their eye off him a little bit. Like, I know with Mayo, if Connolly wasn't playing, Lee Keegan would go on Kilkenny and he would just, he'd dog him. Or if we were playing Castleknock with Ballyboden, someone would be assigned to Kilkenny, and their job for the whole game would be just to stop him playing and not focus on anything else. Whereas in that game, it was hard. I watched it twice, but it's hard to see who was actually assigned to pick up Kilkenny. McDade was near him a good bit, and McDade is a brilliant player, and he had big moments in the game as well. But it didn't look like there was somebody specifically assigned to just stop Kilkenny, and that was he
Yeah, I
obviously
think
had a huge game.
I think from being at the game, his role was just to kind of break it up around the middle. But I think Sean Bugler then really put Matt Day kind of on the back foot as well. He even if you look at the first few points he got in the first half, he
And yeah, and on Bugler, I mean, he's probably the best player in the National League, for Dublin, so he was a huge loss against Meath. So if you're bringing in, two or three of your best players, it's going to improve the team an awful lot. And he was a big factor. But I mean, you go through the names, Dublin still have a lot of quality players, you know, and that's really what won them the game.
I think these younger lads as well, they were saying about the spread of scores. Yeah, Con gets three, Cormac gets 1-2, but then you say Lorcan O'Dell gets three, McGuinness gets two. These are not so familiar names, they are within club football for us, and we know that they are fine footballers. But when they chip in and get a couple of scores, young Brian O'Leary kicked a great score as well, So these are getting confidence these events, and being in a team that's actually playing well. So to have those to come on, and then you would think when losing Con and you're bringing in Tom Lahiff, it's not really like for like, but Tom went on with a certain job and a certain role to do, and it nearly mixed up things, but it worked for Dublin, definitely, and his presence around the pitch is big because he's a big, strong, aggressive type of player.
so the Dubs are back is what you're telling me, Paul.
Pardon me?
So the Dubs are back is what you're telling me.
I'm not telling you that at all. I said we got bet by Meath. We have to beat Meath again next year to make it up.
Well, I think I don't think they ever went away, but
Yeah.
the difference between Dublin now and 5 or 6 years ago, or in your time, Paul, is if for about 10 years, if Dublin turned up and played well, they're going to win. Whereas now, Dublin performed well on Saturday, and they got the win, but they really had to go to the well to do it. They had to put a massive focus on that match, and they put in a huge effort. And Conor Callahan got injured. They were picking up knocks, so it's very early in the championship for Dublin to have to go to the well. Whereas you look at Kerry and their group, they're beating Roscommon by 10 points in second gear, and they will probably get to a quarter final, relatively relaxed and refreshed, whereas like, Dublin now have to go and play Armagh. It's a bit of a nightmare of a group for the four teams that are in it, because you're going to have to play an awful lot of football to get to a quarter final, and then you're going to have three really tough games to try and win in Ireland. So it is good for Dublin, um, but they have a long road ahead of them to win it. They're going to have to win a lot of tough games to win the Ireland. So it's I don't think they're ever gone away. They're just not so far ahead of everyone else as they used to be.
From a goal perspective, if you're looking at the end of the game, Robert Finnerty gets the fortunate goal. John Mayer gets the point in 67 minutes, makes it 213 to 116. Cormac Costello then stretches Dublin ahead 213 to 117. Galway reply. John Daly plays an outstanding kick pass in. Matthew Tierney fists it over the bar, and it's level. And you're thinking, as Galway supporters, you're at home. You're thinking all the momentum is with Galway then at this stage, Paul.
Yes, you would. But it's funny things what your mind plays with you during the game, and if you're wondering what's going on during the game, and they're not playing well, and yet they're still in the game. Dublin have played really well and are level with them. And as I said, the trait was when Galway got those couple of scores, Dublin made a huge effort, whether it was purposely or just a natural reaction, or they got the breaks from the kickouts. They put a lot of effort into the next kickout. And Stephen Cluxton never needs defending in my mind. No goalkeeper does. It's a challenged position. It's a tough position, and it's a chosen one. And if Stephen or any goalkeeper puts the ball out the middle of the park, he's done his job to a degree. It's about the players out there to compete for it. If he sees a press on one side that's not going to suit his direction, well, he's going to kick it to the other side. Like Stephen against me, he put a couple over the sideline, and even in previous rounds prior to that in the Leinster Championship, he did, like his first game back. I don't think he put one over the sideline the other day. Maybe one first half, but he was a bit more. He was a lot more stricter on where his delivery of the ball was going and getting it to that nucleus of players that Dublin were stronger either in the air or on the ground. So, and Dublin knew, look, get possession, retain possession, and it's up to us to do what we do best, and it's get those key players, the experienced players in the ball to try and work that score for themselves.
Kenny, did Galway make a big mistake not pressing that kick out at the end?
Uh, I think it's easy. It's easy in hindsight. Like I thought they did press. Like I mean, it's always tricky when players come on during a game. Like and Lahif, as Paul was saying, like he came out for Ocala, and like it's hard to really know where he was at. Like he just got himself in a good position, and sometimes that can be missed. And I think Galway would have, they probably, like the free initially was kicked from a long way out by Daly, and we got a score. Like it's harder to press up in that scenario. Like if that ball was put down, don't forget, like that was probably a chance for a two-pointer if Daly hadn't kicked it. Like they could have put that down, and the goalie could have went for it, and we would have been a point up if he had got it. And then
The
you can
only,
press. Whereas like
yeah.
it
The
is
only thing
harder.
the only thing I thought there was Gleeson didn't really come up. Tierney didn't really take any long range frees. Cook
Yeah,
didn't have a go at any, and even Shane Walsh obviously wasn't too
yeah.
confident to take
No,
a free.
I wouldn't be criticizing Daly for kicking it, but
Yeah,
it's much harder press a kick out off a score like that than, if you have a close in free, or you take 30 seconds to take a free, you can set up your press easily. Whereas when you get a score from, open play like that, and there's a lot of, like before we got the free that Daly took, the referee ran 50 yards with the ball. So like he covered that ground really quickly, and a lot of the Galway players were back the pitch as a result of that. And like it all happened very fast. So it's very hard to press a kick out with the way that play evolved. Like, you know, he raced up the pitch. Daly took it really quick. You know, fair play to Cluxon. He got the ball out in the tee and he got it out quick enough. Like, so it's, you know, it's, you know, you know, in clutch moments like that, you know, like these things can, you know, it's up to the players really to be able to decide that and implement it. Like, you can't really, you know, you can't really dictate that from the sideline, you know. Um,
Kenny, you just mentioned Keane Darcy earlier. You've obviously worked with him at club level, and even when he went to Ballyboden at the start, like as you mentioned, he wasn't on the Galway radar, but he built unbelievably on that club for him. Is there any one thing he's done, or what has he done for you to get him to this level?
Um, well, I think like you know, it was a funny one the way he joined us. Like, I got tipped off that he was living in the area in Ballycullen, like, which would be, you know, and I met him, like, not to join us, like, but just to train with the club. You know, I said he was welcome to train with the team, you know, and you know, if he wanted to join us down the line, that was fine. If he didn't, that was fine with us as well, because like we do ask in Ballyboden, like we do allow lads to train with us, like if they have a good standard. And I think, you know, the first night he came up, we were doing, you know, weights training or, you know, a gym session, and he got weighed and he was, you know, he was a good weight, but he was lifting phenomenal weights. Like, you know, the lads couldn't believe it. Like, he was, you know, an absolute freak, from that point of view. And then like the Ballyboden lads, like, you know, there's a big gym culture there, and he just he got into that rhythm of getting himself very fit. You know, he lost a lot of weight very quickly, and then yeah, he just dominated. He dominated in the club championship in the air, and I would still have a connection with some of the lads involved with Galway, and you know, I certainly would have been pushing Keane to try and play at the highest level that he can. You know, and I think he's just, you know, for me now, it feels like that he's comfortable playing at that level, like, and he's an important player for Galway. You know, he had a brilliant final last year in the All Ireland final. You know, I think I'd be on to him a little bit, like he wants to get on the score sheet a bit more, you know, and that's probably the thing he's trying to focus on. But yeah, I couldn't say enough about him really in terms of his attitude, and you know, he plays really, you know, every time he plays for Ballyboden, he tries his best, and you know, he's a big leader, and he's a good influence on our group. So he's been brilliant for Ballyboden, and I think Ballyboden has been brilliant for him. So it's just one of those things that worked out well. So hopefully he'll get the rewards this year with Galway out of it.
And overall, Paul, how much of a sucker punch is it for Galway when they nearly had a draw and probably would have taken a draw at the end? Like they could have won it two with the momentum with them, but could have settled for the draw and then to lose by 1 point. How much of a sucker punch do you think that is?
I think we'll only know how much it was when we're further down the road, you know, in the next couple of matches. You know, it does make their next one so important. Like in my mind, and probably wrongly so, like I could see Galway beating Dublin and Armagh beating Derry and Galway beating Derry and Armagh beating. I just could see it as a Dublin Derry last game winner takes all type of thing, you know. Um, and I just bumped into Cormac Costello the day before the game. He lives close to where my father is, and he was passing by in the car, you know, and but wouldn't say anything whether he was playing or not. And I just says, look, I said I hope he's go toe to toe. You know, I hope it's a great game. You know, and you know what will really mess this group of death up is if you guys go and win it. You know, and it has messed it up a bit. You know, there's a lot of big games coming up. We're in the group, and if you do go out of groups, games are coming thick and fast. And Dublin haven't put in so much effort into that. We now have a couple of injuries that we could be doubtful of. With Con, we don't know what the story is there. Paddy Small is injured in the warm up. John Small is not to be seen. Owen Morton hasn't been seen in a while as well. You know, so there's a couple of guys still not back in, and you're going to need that panel of players. You're going to need that 23 or 24 fit players, if not more, to get you through these next couple of weeks and months if it goes that far, you know. So, like for Galway themselves, they were, making changes. Some big players were taken off as well for them, you know, whether it was through fatigue or injury as well. So, the sucker punch, and are they still on the ropes, or are they on the canvas, or have they made it back into the corner for the coach to throw the water at them to see can they get themselves back together for the next day, you know? And that's going to be a huge challenge for them.
We nearly come to this conversation every week when it comes to the podcast. Shane obviously gets more minutes into him, and he needed that game really because he hasn't any championship minutes this year. We haven't seen Damien Gomer yet. What's your view when it comes to that? Because there's no point in saying otherwise. Go and need these two players at their peak this summer.
I think so. Look, I mean, Walsh is exceptional. He's one of the most talented players in the country, and I mean, he's been injured a lot recently, and but like Galway undoubtedly need him at the peak of his powers, like if they're going to win in Ireland. I think Comer, he's been very unfortunate. Like it's really hard to know if he's going to make it back, but I mean, he would make a huge difference, and I think, you know, he would give us more of an option. Like Finnerty was good at winning his own ball, but like Comer in there, it gives you way more options in terms of how you play, and then it's just more threats. Like so, when teams are, picking their best defenders, if they have to pick Walsh, have to mark Comer, have to mark Finnerty. It creates space for other players. So I think a lot of how Galway will do will really depend on keeping Finnerty fit, hoping Walsh gets back to his best, and hopefully Comer comes back in, because it's going to be tough to win the amount of games that they need to win without those fellas. They're exceptional.
In fairness, Matthew Thompson's really stepping up in their absence this year. Really impressive for players just coming out of 20s as well.
Yeah, no, he looked good. I haven't seen much of him, like, but yeah, no, he took his goal very well, and he seems to have very good pace, and yeah, he's certainly done well, but um, he'd probably do better if he had those lads around him as well.
These are two players as well, Paul, like Comer and Walsh, that Gaelic football fans want to see under the new rules as well.
But that's the thing, is where's best for them to play for Galway. Like I don't think you need to see Shane Walsh chasing back up the pitch, on his own 50-yard line, trying to stop or block a run, or protect the 2-point scoring zone. You need to see him up the pitch. Going back to that one-on-one where we're saying defenders are more aggressive now and trying to get out. Like you go one-on-one with Shane Walsh, you ain't going to win a lot of the play. And the same way with Comer, and like Finnerty could work off either of them. And then you have them big men that just have unbelievable cadence of running. The Darcys and the Mars and the Conroys and the Cooks, when he comes on, they can cover that middle ground so well and so quickly. And I think, that the long foot pass, the long delivery that was successful for Galway the other day, maybe you get to see more of that, where it's been delivered from that middle third into a likes of a Comer or Finnerty, and they're screening defenders so fellas get free, and they're creating more scoring chances. And then you have those legs and that energy from the other players coming up to support them if needed. So where you play them, I think closer to goal or in around that scoring arc, it will be more difficult for opposition to deal with than having them back up the pitch and defending.
Where do you think Galway are right now, Paul, in terms of the All-Ireland conversation?
Well, of course, they haven't gone out as much as Dublin haven't come in. They haven't, obviously, Dublin haven't gone away, but people weren't putting Dublin in the top four. I still don't think they're in the top four. They still have to back up a performance. As he would have said it himself, they need consistency now. Uh, bad performance doesn't go away overnight. You have to get consistency, and a challenge against Armagh would be just exactly what they want. And Armagh would still be thinking about an Ulster final and a loss there, and coming to Croke Park. Let's test ourselves to see where we're at, and get a feel for it. So I think that has the makings again of a great game, which will be fairly open, and hopefully, it was great the other day. I thought, one or two questions with the referee decisions. I don't think we had a lot. People were talking about referee during the commentary, but I didn't see an awful lot of them. And there was very little cynical play. There was very little blocking of runs, and obviously we didn't get any red cards or cards really as such. A couple of messy ones, but I think that Dublin Armagh game, if played in the right manner with a bit of fight from both teams, I think it has the makings of a great game.
Do you see this, Kenny, as one of the most open All-Irelands in years?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the league is a really good indicator of form. Like if you look at that, I think you went to the last day of the league and there was, teams could get relegated or win the league depending on how they went. So, I think what you have now is you've 6 or 7 teams at a very similar level. On any given day, I think, there's probably 5 or 6 teams that can beat each other. And really the All Ireland is you're gonna have probably 3 or 4 50-50 games in a quarter final and a 50-50 game in a semi-final, and um a 50-50 final, and we haven't had that in a very long time because Kerry were dominant at one stage, and then Dublin were so dominant for years that effectively if they turned up and they performed to a level, they were going to win. Like Mayo were probably the only team that challenged them for years. So it's completely different now. And I just think, like, looking at it overall, like, it is a bad group for Dublin and Galway and Armagh because, as I say, like, they play an awful lot of football in that group, whereas, Donegal and Kerry would probably, they'll have the advantage, I think, of being able to get through their groups relatively easily. If it might be proved wrong on that, but they'll be sitting pretty in a quarter final. Um, and I think probably like the draw will be important. Like if Galway don't win the group and they get the winners of the Louth group, I think that would be a good draw for them. Whereas like, the more 50-50 games Galway have to play, the harder it is going to be for them to win it. So I would say any one of 5 or 6 teams could win it. Probably Kerry and Donegal a little bit ahead of the rest. But that's only really given the groups that they're in. But it's
Yeah, if,
very
if
exciting.
Dublin keep winning here, it's just going to prove a trickier route for Galway to get back to a final.
I think so, yeah. I think so. But they're capable of doing it. Like they Galway are a good side. And they'll improve when they get up to Croke Park. I know Salt Hill is their home venue and all that, but I think Galway are a better team in Croke Park, and it'll suit them when they get back up there. So I wouldn't be writing off Galway at all. But it's going to be a hard one to win, just given that there's so many good teams in it this year.
Yeah, Paul, you've mentioned it a few times, like this group, yeah, it could easily be where Armagh could beat Derry and the results could be topsy-turvy right until I think we could have scoring difference coming down with the 4 teams here. But if Armagh are to beat Derry this weekend, which most people would expect just given the current form of both teams, but there is going to be reaction in Derry as well. They're not a bad team. But this Galway Derry game is enormous now because if Derry were to lose this Galway Derry game, whoever wins will have the head to head on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way it's worked out. I don't know who pulled the balls out of the hat to make it that way. Like Derry were always going to be seen as the weaker team in that group. And then someone was going to have to play them at the end. And so the top was going to be Dublin, and that was winner takes all. But it's the type of thing that I I said when Armagh, like when Dublin had our dominance, Dublin's dominance actually helped the fact that they were going right to the end of the year and then they took their foot off the gas. Brian Cullen just managed it so well. The physical and mental recovery of players, a team holiday that you're fortunate enough to go on, and the players are away, and then they come back and start developing themselves again. Whereas other teams who've been out of the All Ireland for a long time, or they've been beaten in semi-finals, are hard at it getting ready for a National League in dirty, wet, mucky conditions, and they're starting the year nearly on January the 1st, although they're not supposed to. Dublin really are getting up to the pace of it till maybe February or March. So again, they have that sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 month program. It's not a 12-month program to peak again. And what you're finding, and I think you'll find, is teams are going to find it hard to win in All Ireland, but they're going to find it hard to come back and defend in All Ireland. I said with friends there recently, I think there's a possibility that we'll have 4, maybe 5 different All Ireland winners over the next 4 years now. We've had Armagh. I don't think Armagh will do it this year. I think it'll be somebody else. And then I don't think this day and age where the games are gone, the demands of players, we've seen how players have struggled off the pitch, both emotionally and physically, getting a little bit, how to say, going down the wrong avenue, not getting back into their squads properly, not coming into the right frame of mind. So teams are now missing a couple of key players. That's at hurling and football, that teams aren't able to manage the success of an All Ireland. So I think Armagh have done it, and probably were the better team, best team to win it last year. I don't think to do it this year. I think it's going to be somebody else, and then I think maybe next year it's going to be the same again.
And just finally, Kenny, like this trip now to Celtic Park it's enormous, really.
Say that again, Paul. Sorry.
Just the Galway's trip to Celtic Park on June 1st now on
Yeah,
Sunday.
like
It's
it's
enormous.
yeah, like I mean Derry had a very poor league, like they only picked up a point in the whole thing, but they're still a Division 1 team. Um and it will be, I think the big thing is like it'll be interesting to see how they do against Armagh, Derry, and you'll have a real good insight into where they're at. But like I mean they were very good last year. I mean, don't forget, like Derry were in the top three last year. Like it was Derry, Dublin, Kerry were kind of the three teams that people would have expected to win the All Ireland this time last year, and they obviously, they fell away. But they've still a lot of good players. So I'll be very interested to see how they do against Armagh. Like I mean, if Derry were to beat Armagh, I mean that would blow the whole thing open. Like, but I think Galway, you know, the big thing really is that three teams are still getting out of the group.
Yeah,
If it was only two out of the group, I think it would be Galway would be under savage pressure. Whereas, like, even if the worst came to it and they lost to Derry, like they may get to it, they may still get out of the group winning their last game. So, I think the bigger thing is like, you know, how will they be if they get to a quarter final and if they play Donegal or Kerry and both of those teams are fresh? I think that would be a very tough challenge for whoever meets either of those teams in a quarter final.
yeah.
But I
That's
think
that's
that
looking
I'm
very likely
hoping,
now at the minute. Yeah,
yeah, I'm hoping Galway will do enough to get out of the group. This still a quality team, and they're in reasonable shape. Like the only lost thing, like the thing about like you win a game, like you say like that game went to the last kick out. If Galway win the kick out, they probably win. If they don't, they wind up losing by a point. So it's fine margins, and I think overall Galway are still in decent shape.
absolutely. And that's all we do have time for on today's show. A big thank you to Paul and Kenny for coming on to this week's podcast.
All right.
Thanks, Lewis.